So we were just talking about how bad Aaron Schneider sucks at bow hunting.
Love it.
I say Aaron Schneider has no self-control.
Yeah.
That's why he went to a trad bow.
Aaron. I've known Aaron a lot of years, and it's been fun watching him move from a guy that was an absolute killer with just a normal bow. Then some people say he took the training wheels off and went to the trad bow, and he's flat told me over the phone, he's like, I did it because I wanted to prove to people I could do it with the trad bow, and he did it.
Yep.
Like, he successfully did it, and I'm not aware of anyone else that is like a public figure that kills as many people with a trad bow. There's always those outliers.
Did you say kills as many people?
Well,
you know something about Aaron that I don't.
It
wouldn't surprise
That's a Rambo type situation, isn't it?
We're always looking for sound bites, I'm sure. This will get us started, I'm sure.
No.
You're going to get a text from Aaron after this going, I don't kill people with a bow.
Yeah. Kill him with my hands, man. Come on. What's the sporting fun in that?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and apologize right now, and this has forever been recorded. So.
Well, it's Aaron at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, the spicy water. He's such a cool guy. We got a chance to just shoot a couple arrows, hang out for yesterday morning, basically the entire morning. I've known him for a long time, so I had him on my first podcast, which was Launch Code, and him and Gritty were on.
Mm-hmm.
Same Aaron. Same exact Aaron. It hasn't changed.
Yes.
Even with the new CEO title of Kafaru, it just hasn't changed.
I was teasing him recently. I said, somebody gave you a budget? That's kind of scary, Aaron.
Yeah.
Kind of scary. No, he's a good dude. I've known him for, 15 years. First time I ever met him, he wasn't even in the hunting industry. He walked up to me at a show in Denver, and he was asking area advice in Colorado.
Right.
He just moved to Colorado and was trying to figure out where to hunt. And so he's a good dude.
He's a good dude. I've appreciated my friendship with him for a very long time. I've not had the opportunity just because schedules are incredibly busy. He and I have not ever hunted together, but I've thoroughly enjoyed watching him grow in a variety of ways. That part, like when we've had office discussions after he calls, it's like, this is cool watching his evolution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see anybody that's that committed and passionate about something, and you can see it.
Yeah.
He has a lot of mission focus. And I love watching people like that. I love watching. That's what social media for me is all about, to be honest with you. Like, you tune into that. Like, I don't give a shit about Twitter. I don't even get on that thing, man. I get on it for like 5 seconds, talk, if I'm like having a bad day, I'll talk shit to somebody and that's about it. And then I'll get off and just be like, oh, that's funny.
I don't even know if I have Twitter followers. I know I'm on there because you made me do it, but I don't even have followers.
Yeah.
I've never been on it.
Baker convinced us about a year ago that, Twitter is something that we need to at least have a presence on. And so he talked with Ike at the Everybody's Talk Out There event about it. And we put a lot of effort into it. And then 2020 happened. And Twitter has turned into a black hole that I had to just get off of because it turns me into a conspiracy theorist if I stay on there way too long. It's not healthy mentally. So I just have to, this is my 15 minutes of Twitter a day and I'm done. I can't handle anymore.
I got in there this morning and it's super funny because, people, I think they're just professional trolls and they jump on there just to talk shit, which is, hey, if that's your thing, I don't really have the time for that. And, but I do find a mild amount of entertainment with it where I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm in, I'm out, I post, and then I just forget about it and leave. I think that was just some sage advice from a friend who's like, don't even read the comments. Who gives a shit? Just move on with your life. So just get on, post, get out. Don't worry about it. Watch all your time. Your screen time start to decrease on your mobile device. You'll be a much happier guy at the end of the day.
That's why I start doing the same thing with Facebook and Instagram. Just watch my, trying to get my screen time down because not only do I get just angry, but it's a giant time suck.
Yeah.
Sit there and go, holy crap, what did I do with the last 20 minutes? I could have done 50 burpees. What the hell? I mean, nobody wants to do burpees, but you could have.
Yeah, they're much more beneficial than scrolling through Twitter. That's for sure. Well, I suppose I should introduce you guys. That's probably the one thing. Or, that's probably more beneficial for you guys to introduce yourself. So who the hell do I have here today?
Let's start with Ike.
Ike Eastman, president and owner of Eastmans Publishing. We have Eastman's Hunting Journal, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, and Eastman's Hunting TV, and then a plethora of other stuff, Beyond the Grid, which is a YouTube TV show, and Eastman Elevated, which is a big game, Western big game podcast. We have Wingman, which is a podcast TV show about wing hunting, bird hunting, and Flycast, which is a podcast about fly fishing.
Bring that mic in a little bit. There you go. Sorry.
Better?
Well, this is, and we'll get into this. So I'll switch to you and then we'll come back.
So I am Scott Reekers. I am Ike Eastman's digital media director. Over the course of time, my job's evolved. I'm also doing a lot of business development. In the last couple of years, that's kind of one of those, I went from a sales to business relationships and things of that nature. In the last little while, we've seen our digital department grow.
Millennial.
Wow.
He understands.
Yeah.
I was born in 83, okay?
It's the last year. Is that the last year
it's
of
like
millennial?
second to last year of millennial. Maybe you could be qualified that. So I guess I'm the token millennial. Don't tell my wife that if she's watching. She will tease me for forever. And so, but that's my role there. All the digital media that comes out of Eastman's is my responsibility to make sure that it happens and is distributed and work on relationships like this one.
So Eastman's, it's been around for a couple years. Just a couple.
One or two.
I think it'd be interesting.
Generations.
Like walk us through the history and the evolution.
Yeah.
And you don't have to summarize it. You can take as much time as you want.
Usually I have an elevator pitch about this. So,
no, you don't need to elevator it, man. Yeah.
So 1957, when the 57 Chevy was popular, if you can imagine that, my grandfather, who was living in Washington State, decided, you know what? I want to go to Alaska and guide hunters. And it was starting to become quite a big thing. In retrospect, it was the beginning of it.
Right.
And he started guiding hunters for a couple seasons. Then he said, you know what? I think there's an audience, because he would bring photos. He always liked taking photos. He would bring photos home and show photos of polar bears and dull sheep and caribou and stuff to people, and they're just in awe. Pretty soon he found an audience. He's standing there showing photos, and there's 50 people standing around in his neighborhood wanting to see all the photos. He's like, man, I think I can take a camera up there, a 35 millimeter camera up there, and film some of this stuff and bring it back, and then I'll show them. And so it just kind of progressed into, pretty soon he was doing that, taking film, bringing it back to high school auditoriums and live narrating a polar bear hunt. Now, he never showed, until in the 80s, he never showed a kill scene, because he always told us kill scenes are the easy way out. Show the animal. People want to see the animals, want to see how how they are in their own natural environment. And so he would bring all this stuff back, and he would pack high school auditoriums all over the country, Pennsylvania, Washington, California. Almost daily now, I'll get an email or a text message or a Facebook message or whatever. It says, hey, I remember watching your grandfather's stuff. I was a little kid in the auditorium in Spokane, Washington, and I watched him bring the polar bear, because he had, which this polar bear is actually in my brother's living room, he had a life-size mounted polar bear that he started traveling with, and they put it on stage. And you can imagine my grandfather's 6 foot, and there's an 11-foot bear standing behind him, and then him showing that bear hunt and all this crazy, dog sleds. And he went to Point Hope, Alaska, and it was early in the 60s, and hung out with the Eskimos for 2 seasons. The first season, this is all documented on a movie called North of the Sun. And the first season was really lonely, because the Eskimos didn't talk English, didn't speak much English, and they didn't want anything to do with him because he was an outsider. So he spent almost 3 months in the winter by himself, just trying to get these people to warm up to him. And then he had a friend who, Warren Johnson, and another couple guys, they went out on a polar bear hunt. They take these float planes, it was ski planes then, super clubs, and they went out on the ice pack and they would shoot polar bear. Everybody would shoot 1 or 2 polar bear. They went out there one time, shot a huge polar bear, would have been the world record by significant amounts. They measured it on the ground, put it in the super cubs, and they came back. And as they come back, they hit a headwind and ended up running out of fuel and landing the plane on the ice, what they called slush. It was a slush cake. So it's not really ice, it's
Right.
slush.
Yeah.
They landed down, and this is all documented in that, landed on this slush, and the plane immediately starts to sink. So they crawl out the plane, knock a hole in the back of the plane, and they sit on the plane for the night because the wings hit the slush and it's got enough buoyancy to hold their weight. So they sit all night in the middle of winter, 60 below zero, 40 mile an hour wind, all night, and think, there's a line in there. He says, at this moment, I knew I'd seen my kids for the last time. They sit there all night. And then the next morning, the tide comes in, breaks the airplane up, and the airplane sinks. And so they spend the next day jumping from small ice chunk to small ice chunk to small ice chunk till they find one big enough to hold both of their weights. They have nothing with them. I mean, I think they both had a down sleeping bag, which is worthless when it's wet.
Right.
And they had their clothing, wet from their head to their toes. And they find one big enough to hold them. And the second night, of course, it's dark almost all day this time of year. Second night, they hear an airplane fly over, really low, really slow. And he said, one of the worst things ever is when that airplane comes and you're yelling and screaming and waving, and they just think we're seals. They're just black dots on the ice. The plane leaves, flies off. Oh my gosh. And so they spent the next day on the same shelf, snuggled up, trying to survive. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, melting the snow to survive, hydrated as much as you can. The third day, an airplane flies by and drops a raft, and the raft goes through the ice. Poof! And sinks because it was supposed to fill with air on the way down.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It goes right through the ice. So, and then a storm comes in. So they wait another night. The fourth day, a plane shows up and they drop one of those shelters that they had in the Navy for the Northern Sea, and it lands on the ice and they crawl in it. And then they finally get rescued, and an airplane's able to, or I think it was an airplane, they were able to land, the ice had melted or froze enough, they were able to land an airplane and come get them. And so flew back to Wyoming. He's dehydrated. This is all in the newspapers. You can imagine, because my grandmother, who had 4 kids at the time, 3 boys at the time, listening to all this, she's widowed, you can imagine.
Right.
And flies back to Wyoming and recovers, flies back up there because he didn't tell the story. His deal, and my grandfather was an adventurer. Everybody in my family has a sense of adventure. I don't want to do anything unless it's adventurous.
Right.
It's pointless for me. And so flies back up there. And now, because he went on the ice, got stranded, and came back, he's like a god to them. And so they, open arms, bring him in, they build him mucklucks, and they take him out on the dog sleds, and they hunt ducks, and they hunt seals, and they hunt polar bear. And then he gets invited to the whale hunt, which is a huge thing you can imagine. Right. And they literally go out and skin boats in caribou skin boats, and they go out on the ocean, and they killed a whale, drug it up, and he helped the whole thing and documented it all in video. So he was an adventurer, and that's one of 1,000. I could sit here for 2 hours and tell Gordon Eastman stories about him. He landed him and Warren Johnson, same guy, flying up the Alaska Highway in a Super Cub, and they land because you have to refuel every so often. So the U.S. military had fuel stops all the way up that highway. They land to refuel, and when they land, they blow a tire. Plane dives, bounces the prop off the ground, prop strike, bends one of the props, tire's blown, and they're in the middle of nowhere. And there's no radios. People are like, well, they went north, and we haven't seen them for a month. I don't know. Probably dead. Right. So they sit there for a couple of days hoping somebody else would land or come up with a vehicle or whatever. Nothing. So they have this idea. They're like, well, I think we can take the tire on the airplane, fill it with willow boughs, and sew it shut with our boot strings. And then we can take the prop off and beat it somewhat straight enough to take off with one of us in the airplane. So they do this. Warren Johnson takes off, who's the pilot, takes off for Whitehorse, and Grandpa's sitting there for 3 days waiting for somebody to come get him, hoping that Warren didn't crash on the way or something, and nobody knows he's there. Right. And here comes 2 more Super Cubs back to pick him up. It's just story after story after story, just like that. It was crazy.
And the irony of that is first time I ever heard that story told, not like Gordon, actually narrating it or anything like that. But the first time I ever heard Ike tell that story, we're standing by a campfire 6 miles deep in a backpack hunt, getting snowed on 6 inches. Like, so the adventure just kind of permeates through everything that Eastmans does. And
It was a really cold night.
A miserable night.
My tent leaked.
Wow.
And I woke up swimming.
I wasn't miserable. I was in a Hilleberg, but we won't mention the other brand.
I was not. I poured enough water out of that tent that night to fill this Yeti.
His pad was floating. And I'm not exaggerating.
We've been there. Yeah, I've been there.
So anyway, that's who my grandfather was. And then he took all that and started building theatricals and did some filming for Walt Disney, some wildlife filming for Walt Disney, and hung out in Hollywood quite a bit. And then in the 70s, my dad always says that my grandfather went through 3 fortunes because he was an adventurer. So if he had money, there was an adventure to be had, right?
Yeah.
And so in the 70s, he kind of all this pared down, and my dad was an outfitter. My dad, while my grandfather was doing all this stuff in the 60s and 70s, my dad was in Vietnam for 2 tours. And so my dad would come home on leave, and he instead of going to Wyoming, he'd be in British Columbia.
Right.
He'd land in British Columbia or Yukon and spend his leave hunting moose or hanging out. They had a cabin in the middle of nowhere in British Columbia, and they had wolves. It's a completely different story. They trapped some or got wolf pups and grew 3 generations of wolves to study them to see, what the apex predator really was like, and crazy things like that. So my dad's in Vietnam, comes back, becomes an outfitter in Wyoming. High country mule deer hunting that's his forte. He just loved high country mule deer hunting. And then outfitting kind of wasn't his deal for various reasons. He's not a huge people person. He would be not great here. Completely nervous and very shy. But he then in the 80s, they took these theatricals and put them on VHS. And back in the day, you remember this, they actually had video stores like Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
And you would sell the VHS tapes to Blockbuster, and they would rent them out. And so they took all these theatricals and put them on VHS. And my dad and a couple other guys would travel all over the country to every single store, and they would sell these VHS tapes. My dad's sitting in the Harrisburg show, the Great American Outdoor Show. And at the time, and I think today still, is one of the largest outdoor hunting shows on the planet. It's huge, huge. And he's sitting there selling videos. And it occurs to him that all these guys from Pennsylvania want to come out west elk hunting, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know that there's public land everywhere out here. They don't understand it. And so he comes up with this idea. He's like, I'm going to put together a newsletter that is like, a little pamphlet that's fact sheet on how to come out west hunting. Because if I can get these guys to come out west hunting, they'll buy more of my videos,
Self-licking ice cream cone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
So builds this pamphlet, turns into a magazine, turns into a newsletter. Then it turns into a magazine. And he started in 1987. By 1997, it's a full-fledged publication. And he starts, long story short, that was the Eastman's Hunting Journal. It morphed into Eastman's Hunting Journal, and he spun off a bow hunting magazine called Eastman's Bow Hunting Magazine. Then with that, spun off, there was this crazy little TV network called the Outdoor Channel. And they were actually gold panning is how the Outdoor Channel started.
What?
Two guys started the Outdoor Channel.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they bought a Christian network. Like, back in the satellite days, you had to have a network that would then stream to satellites. There was a Christian network that was going under. And so these 2 guys that wanted to put their show on TV about gold panning couldn't find anyone who would take it. So they just bought their own network and put gold panning on. Well, they go, well, that's great, but we can't have gold panning 24 hours, 7 days a week. We need some outdoor content. So they started going to TNN, which is now like TNN had like Real Tree Outdoors and Mossy Oak Obsession and all these TV shows. And they would get reruns and put them on the Outdoor Channel. My dad came up to, the guy's name was Wade Sherman. Dad walked up to him at the SHOT Show one day and said, I have a TV show I want to put on your network. Oh, great. Yeah, whatever. When you get a pilot, let me know. He goes, I have a pilot. Goes, okay, when you get a season, send me the pilot. And then when you get a season, let me know. He goes, I have a season. I have 27 episodes already filmed. Wait, what? And it's on what? Western Big Game? The whole thing is on Western Big Game. That's it. I said, yeah. Okay, send them to me and I'll look. And then 2 weeks later, they go, yeah, we want this. So they put it on the Outdoor Channel, and, advertising back then was a pain because nobody believed in outdoor TV.
Yeah.
There was no money in it.
Right.
And so they started the TV show, and we fought tooth and nail for that was in 99 for probably close to 5 or 6 years on the Outdoor Channel with not very many sponsors, little sponsors. And then it started blowing up, and we went 52 weeks in 2007, and it's been on every week since then. So that's that story. I bought the company. My dad's 74. My brother and I bought the company in 2008, and it was pretty much the 2 magazines and the TV show.
Right.
And then I recently, my brother's significantly older than me. I won't tell him how old. He's older enough. He's still old enough and big enough to beat me up. But he's significantly older, and he's wanting to step away from the business part of it and do the stuff he wants to do. We call it, in our family, we call it retread. You don't retire, you retread.
Yeah.
Do the things you want to do, not the things you have to do.
Right.
And so I bought it from him a few years ago. He's still involved, still does the stuff he wants to do. He still writes. He still hunts as much as he wants. He loves our Wyoming MRS, which is the research tool we have in the magazine.
Right.
And in Tag Hub, it's all the different areas and licenses and all that stuff. He's a savant with numbers, and he's really creative, which is unique. And then when we bought it, I took the magazine and the television show, because we bought it in 08. And if everybody remembers what happened in 09, everything crashed.
Yeah.
And they said media, print media is dead.
Yep.
Traditional media is gone.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day I was sitting on my boat fishing with the guy that printed my magazine, and we were just chewing the fat. And I said, I don't know what we're going to do. Print media is, they're telling me print media is dead. I don't know what we're going to do. And he goes, I'm the one in trouble. He says, you're not. The content you provide, people still want. You're just going to deliver it in a different way.
Right.
I went, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. So we started Beyond the Grid, which is a television show that's on YouTube, but it's on a bunch of other stuff. Waypoint TV, it's on Amazon Prime, all that stuff. And because it's just a different way that you're getting a different audience, delivering it a different way. And then we started a blog and a newsletter that's almost 200,000 people strong now. And we send them content 3 or 4 times a week, and they read the content and tips and tactics and the hunting stories and the gear reviews and all that stuff. So we're delivering the same stuff as the magazines, just in a different way.
Right.
And we're doing it to, come to find out, a new audience, people that aren't traditional print media guys.
Right.
They're not going to go subscribe to a magazine and pay you $25 to subscribe and you get the content. So I grew it to what it is now, almost doubled the company size. And even through all the craziness, pandemic, oddly enough, for our audience has been a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Because people
are at home and they got some time. And I've noticed that where I'll pick up more magazines now. Like, one, I hate reading online magazines on my mobile device. It's not the same. And yesterday I was looking through Bass Pro. We're in the new Bass Pro catalog. So I was actually looking for my ad, like an arrogant prick. And
this is follow through, making sure it's in there, right?
Checking it out. Look at me.
On a bass rod while I was at it.
But I was like, this is great. And then I found myself looking through it and enjoying the experience of a catalog, because I really haven't had a catalog, catalog for, I don't know, however many years. But I was looking at lures and I was like, this is really cool. But I had that exact thought. I was like, man, this is really cool. And I picked up a few journals. Like, I really like the well done, higher end. Like, magazines are full of ads most of the time, which is quite possibly the only reason why I don't buy them, is because they're just full of fucking ads.
That's why we keep it. We have a percentage. It's no more than 40% of our magazine will ever be ads.
Right.
And the ads in it aren't, it's all specific. It's going to be a Savage rifle ads. It's going to be a Bowtech ad or a Hoyt ad or whatever. It's going to be specific to the magazine. And my mom's name's Birdie. So we have a Birdie principle. And so you're not going to see male enhancement drug ads. You're not going to see tobacco ads.
Right.
You're not going to see alcohol ads. Not that there's anything wrong with those. I just don't want them in my magazine.
Sure.
I want my kids to be able to flip through it and read the articles and not wonder what's in there.
Right.
So, and that's why, because we felt the same way. That's why we call it a journal. It's because it's not full of ads. It's specific ads that make sense to you as a hunter. And then you get benefit out of not just the ad, but the stories and the articles and everything else. But you're right. When people pick it up, they're like, it feels like something. You know, it's got a gritty cover on it. It feels like a hunting magazine.
It's substantive, right? It feels important. And I think most everything else, you know, you can forget about the magazine that you read online, right? You can forget about that. It's super easy. But if you have a really good journal or magazine, you keep it. It stays on your it stays on your coffee table. You take it home, you roll it, you throw it in your briefcase or whatever it is. It's substantive.
Yep. And the other thing I find myself with your cell phone is, I mean, how long does it take before you get a notification? You're reading some article you like, and 15 seconds later, you get a notification and you find yourself reading an email, answering a text message, and you know, some social media post something. And so it's not, you don't get to escape.
No.
In a magazine, you get to fully escape and entrench yourself in whatever content you're reading.
And as a nerd, like, there's a nostalgia piece to it, because I worked at a grocery store when I was in high school. And of course, the newsstand came out. Well, there were like 5 of us that we all hunted, and we loved big mule deer. And so we were constantly waiting for the next issue of Eastmans to come out.
Right.
And so we would literally all take our turn with the one magazine that we could afford, because we're a bunch of high school kids trying to figure out, you know, how to shell out enough gas to go do what we wanted to do on the weekends. So we'd buy this one copy and we'd read it on our breaks. And we would literally wear the copy of Eastman's out. Then, you know, okay, we might read the others afterwards just to get a little more. But Eastman's was the one we wanted because it felt substantive. But then on top of that, for me, there's a nostalgia to it. Like picking that magazine up and seeing it, I sound old now, but it brings me back to the good old days, like those memories of the early 2000s when, you know, Region G. Good old days. It is what it is.
Damn millennials.
I know. But it brings me back to those days where, you know, I didn't know any better than just a Snickers bar and, you know, those boots that I bought at Walmart to go up the trail and that sort of thing. Brings back those memories. And to me, that's a nostalgia you can't get with a phone. And I'm saying this as a digital media director. Like, there's a nostalgia that's associated with this. Yeah, I love seeing all the content on digital, and it's my job to grow it. But on the same end, I don't think that the nostalgia of holding something like that is ever going to go away.
I would agree. I think when people say things are dead, they say things, and obviously those are blanket statements, like print is dead. No, mass-produced, low-quality advertising is dead. We'll call that, we'll just call it what it is. It's dead. But I don't think people, it will never run out of style to turn a page. There's too much of a visceral experience to be able to feel the crisp corner of a page when you're turning it. It's interesting. I just read a book, which sounds weird, but I just read a book the other day or the last couple weeks, and I haven't had or read a book in 2 years, probably. A physical book. Yeah, I've got them on my tablet and Audible. I'm listening to a book typically every week, depending on what I'm doing. So, but I'm listening to them, right? And for years, I mean, this is my, you know, my small little library, right? But for years, I would read a book a week, and it was it was an interesting experience only because I was like, man, this is something that I truly do miss. And the only reason I read the book was I was having a hard time sleeping. My wife gave me the book. She was like, you need to just try to read and go to bed. And then I stayed up till like 2:00 in the morning reading a fucking book.
You might as well. You're like, well, that
thank
didn't
you.
Work great.
That worked great. I appreciate it.
Was this supposed to be boring?
I know. It wasn't.
Maybe I need to find a different subject.
I know. So where are you originally from then? Are you from Colorado originally?
Nope.
No?
Nope. I was actually born and raised in Wyoming,
Okay.
5th generation Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I went to college there, never left. I decided in high school that I was never going to move outside of Wyoming for the recreating opportunities we have is second to none.
Where do you guys live?
Powell, Wyoming.
Okay.
We're about 70 miles east of Yellowstone. So we live in the pretty part.
Right. The really nice part. And then are you out there too?
Yep. I moved to Powell in 2014. Actually, just had 7-year anniversary with Eastmans. So we've been
Grew
there
up
a
in
while
Rock
now.
Springs. God bless you.
Yes, I did.
Beautiful
I love
place.
If you like
Lucky
the wind.
you.
See, all right. Since I have a platform and we've opened up the Rock Springs
Please,
wormhole,
yeah.
So for some reason, and this is history of Rock Springs, I understand why it happened. Rock Springs was actually 4 mining camps. And so the interstate wove through these 4 different mining camps when it was built.
Coal
Yeah,
mining?
it was all coal. So Rock Springs has several claims to fame. One is a 48 Hours show that talked about the mafia that was there. That was interesting. My dad moved there in 82, and this stuff was all like 79, 80
Yeah, this
when all
isn't
that
the
stuff was
30s
going
mafia.
on.
This is
And so, yeah, it was.
the
Seriously?
70s
Yeah,
mafia.
yeah, like it was pretty nuts. Like, I won't go into that wormhole because that's a whole. You could do a whole podcast.
Right.
You find the people involved with that. So everybody knew that when my dad moved there in 82, like, sure, you want to move to Rock Springs? He's like, yeah, it's out west. I want to go hunt and be out there, and
Right.
that sort of thing. And so they moved. Mom had a job within an hour of Dad's interview. Like she actually got hired as a teacher before Dad even finished his interview. And so I was born in 83. But Rock Springs, unfortunately, is all the rough areas of town are visible from the interstate.
Right.
So I don't understand why that has happened. And like the longer I've been away from there, the more you notice things. And so Rock Springs has a lot of great people that I grew up with. My best friend still lives in that Rock Springs, Green River area. And so but it's a hard town, man. It's a very hard town because there's a lot of oil field boom.
Yep.
Trona actually took a hit with this last year. That's rare. I know miners there took a 10% pay cut just to keep their mines running, that sort of thing. But Trona is usually the stalwart in Sweetwater County.
Right.
And so that happened. But for some reason, they put every rough neighborhood visible from the interstate. So Rock Springs gets a terrible reputation. And then, of course, we had the mafia late 70s, early 80s, and that boom. So, that's our claim to fame.
I just know it from getting gas. That's how I know it. I just know it from getting gas. That's it. And
that's it.
You're on, you're off, and you're like just as fast as you can do it.
This is true.
Yeah, it's true, right? I've never actually met somebody from Rock Springs. I don't try to talk to them when I'm there.
Do I need to
have all their teeth.
Ouch, Ike. Ouch.
Ouch.
Step off.
I'm
Do I
kidding.
get off the
That
podcast right now? No. It's Sweetwater County is like, it's a mule deer hunting, like they're nuts there. About
You guys
the
are going to
mule deer
have to explain this to me because I've heard this now from both of you. When people catch the muley bug,
Mhm.
why? What is going on in their brains?
Okay, so I firmly believe there. This is going to be a rabbit trail.
Please.
There's different types of hunters. There's collectors, which all of these types, there's nothing wrong with any of them.
Sure.
They're just different people. They're different personalities.
I
They're
definitely want to hear this. Yeah.
So- There's collectors. And what a collector is, he goes, okay, I want to shoot a 200-inch mule deer. Once that happens, he sets mule deer aside, check the box.
Mhm.
Okay, now I want to shoot a 370 bull elk.
Right.
Set that aside. Now I want to shoot sheep and I want to get a grand slam,
Right.
all the species. And they're collectors.
Yeah.
Then there's guys that are hunters that really what they're about is the adventure and the trophy size or the if it's not a huge adventure, it's okay. It was fun, but not great. Then there's guys that we call specialists. And they'll focus on one species. They'll like, yeah, I'll shoot a mule deer, but I love elk. That is my deal. Having a 800-pound animal screaming his head off at 30 yards, that's what gets me off.
Right.
That's my deal. And then there's guys with mule deer. They're like, yeah, elk hunting's fun. It's different time of year. It's different thing. But I really like going on a high country mule deer hunt where it's like sheep hunting, but they're mule deer and you're in their backyard and it's a different hunt, different type of hunt. And there's guys that are sheep hunters. I mean, I've never got the sheep bug, which is weird. I'm a weird one in my family. My brother has a sheep bug. My grandfather had the sheep bug. And that means, their pinnacle, what they strived, the best thing they could do in their life is kill sheep. And some of them are, I want to kill as many, as many grand slams as I can, or I just love dull sheep hunting, or I just want to hunt sheep, period.
Yeah.
Whatever. So high country mule deer for me is a.
Do you have that bug? Are you, what do you consider yourself in those categories?
I'm gonna get so much hate mail over this. I actually love antelope hunting.
Do you really?
Yes, it is. It is one of the coolest thing, in my opinion, one of the coolest things, because when you're talking about a mediocre elk versus a big elk, you're talking 20 to 30 inches.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room to go, well, he's 27 inches bigger than a mediocre bull.
Right.
When you're talking a mediocre antelope versus a trophy antelope, one that goes in the book, you're talking inches, 2 inches. 78-inch goat versus an 80-inch goat.
Yep.
78-inch goat, people don't even pay attention. 80-inch goat, now you've hit that threshold.
Yep. Right.
2 inches, 1 inch on each side, and there's 4 measurements on each antler. So it could be a quarter of an inch on every measurement. Takes it from mediocre to a Boone and Crockett.
Got it.
And so I love that. The other thing I really love is it's a great place to start hunting because you see tons of animals.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to take kids or beginner
Really?
hunters. You see tons of animals, tons of bucks. You have lots of opportunities. If you mess one up, it's okay. We'll go down the road and 2 miles later, we'll have another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity. The weather's usually not bad. So you're not having to embrace the suck with new hunters, because nothing turns a new hunter off than take them on a backcountry 6-mile death march in 6 inches of snow and they're freezing their ass off in a tent all night.
That's one of the main concerns that I have with my daughters. And so turkey hunting's great because I'll just sit in the blind. They can bring it.
Nice.
They bring in a bunch of toys and they're playing in there. It's kind of fun, right? And they get to, they're calling. And, I mean, it's all
they mess it up.
They're all messed up. Who cares? There's another turkey down there.
Right.
There's 2 more coming around the corner. Who cares?
Yep.
But
so that's why I love antelope hunting.
That's interesting.
And then you can take that beginner and you can take it to a trophy level where I have got to kill me a Boone and Crockett in Colorado. I've got one in Wyoming. I haven't done it in Colorado. I've killed 10 antelope in Colorado and I've missed it Boone and Crockett twice.
And what's your preferred hunting device?
I'm a rifle. I antelope hunt rifle because bow, you're at another level of hell.
Oh, I know. That's what I was asking.
You're either sitting in a blind at 95 degrees.
That's what I was asking.
or you're spot and stock, which antelope's eyes
Spot and stock animal. That's what I was going to say. It was like spot and stock antelope is next level shit.
I have done it once and went, okay, I'm going to go kill a Boone and Crockett before I come back to this hell.
Right.
Because their eyes are an 8 power. They have an 8 power eye,
which is incredible.
Yeah, and they have a good sense of smell plus everything else. You're hunting them on the face of the moon pretty much. So there's not a lot of terrain to break it up. So it's fun. It's a good time.
And where are those? Where are they indigenous to? What region?
So
was their original?
Well, they're actually a prehistoric animal.
Are they really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're one of the only North American animals that is not evolved much since prehistoric times.
Wow.
So the epicenter of antelope is Wyoming. We have almost 500,000 antelope in Wyoming, which is more than we have people.
Yep.
And then the next biggest state is Montana. It has 150,000. Yeah, it's stupid difference.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you go to Colorado, it has like 80,000.
Right.
I mean, the epicenter is Wyoming.
No. Sports.
For antelope hunting.
But I guess my question is so, and that's been the circumstance, we'll call it in modern North American history. That's been the epicenter is specifically Wyoming.
Yep. They need plains. They have a really interesting diet. They're people think they're a goat. They're not. They are their own species. They are not a deer species. They're not part of the goat family. They are their own because they're prehistoric.
Right.
So they need a very wide but narrow range of food, meaning they eat sagebrush. So it has to have lots of sagebrush.
Right.
That's how they survive winters.
Uh-huh.
They have to have what's called winter fat, which is a plant that they eat during the winter that is extremely high in protein, which is, it has to be at a certain elevation, but it has to have the certain a growing season that's the right length, certain elevation, and it has to have a certain amount of sun. So it's a weird place, and just happens that Wyoming is mostly what they call a high desert, so 5,000 above, 4,000 and above, which is perfect for their habitat.
What did you say that plant is called winter fat?
Winter fat. Yep.
That's the name of the plant.
Yep.
So what's that look like?
It almost looks like a moss with little tiny leaves, and you touch it and it's very brittle, but it's pokey.
Interesting.
Yeah,
and they eat that
in the winter.
Huh.
Really neat stuff. Cows love it too.
Right. So can you do because the population is 500,000 in Wyoming, is that an easy out of state OTC?
There's no antelope tags in Wyoming that are OTC for antelope.
No? Okay.
But we have areas that have leftover tags every year. So you go to eastern side over by Sheridan, Gillette. There's areas over there that have leftover tags. You can get one every year if you want.
Really?
There are some struggles because it's a lot more private over there, and there's in-holdings of public around private. But there is hunting opportunity. If you want to shoot an antelope every year, easily done in Wyoming.
Got it.
Not going to shoot a boone or crockett.
Yeah.
Right.
But an antelope, every year you can do that.
So is that your favorite, we'll call it wild meat or wild game too to eat?
No.
Or so what do you prefer to eat?
High country mule deer.
Okay.
High country mule deer.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
why?
Wyoming, our high country deer have a very lush summer pasture. It's above 9,000, above 7,000 to 12,000 feet. So it's very lush, which they pack on the fat big time. And then if you take one, the 15th of September, a lot of our area is open. You take one and he's barely out of velvet. So he hasn't gone through all the rut stuff. It's amazing, amazing meat. You cook it on a Traeger or a pellet grill.
Yeah.
And my kids, my two girls they're young. Oldest is 10. You wrap that in a piece of bacon, I shoot a deer every year. You wrap that in a piece of bacon and put just salt and pepper on it, throw it on the Traeger, cook it till it's pink, still red and running red.
Right.
Throw it out on a plate. It will be gone. They'll eat that before they eat anything else on the table.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Amazing.
I've seen that with my kids. My kids, they know when it's moose night, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, clean their plates.
Yep.
Not a problem. They will not do that if I gave them Kobe, beef or the most expensive steak we could buy. I've never tried that experiment, but they'll clean it out with moose.
We have a game at our house, and it's what kind of elk is this? Is what my 3-year-old will say sometimes. And so for the most part, how it usually works is my wife Rachel, she likes to cook elk. Like that's her thing. So she really learned and experimented with that. And so the kids love eating that, but with the ground meat that we have, there's like small kids, we do a lot of like casserole type of things, just because it's really easy for her to prepare. And
Same thing we do.
There's always
easy
this game
for an infant to grab off the table.
Right.
Yeah, well, and Ian's funny. You put meat in front of him, he eats that like nobody's business. Granted, he's like his dad eats everything in sight. And so it's fun seeing them evolve and grow. But we've also, I didn't live in a great place to waterfowl hunt anytime till I moved to Powell. Yeah. And so I'd done it, but not to the extent that I'm able to do now. And so adding that now, that turned into, is this chicken or duck? Is it dark, girls? It's dark meat. Okay, that is duck or goose. So they're learning this process and growing through that. But really the only meat that we have in our house that isn't game is chicken. I mean, everything else is something that I've harvested, and hopefully my kids eventually will be harvesting too.
My youngest is hilarious. Shoot, last winter we're driving out of our house and we hit the county road, And we turn on the county road, and somebody had hit a deer that morning. And there's a dead doe along the side, stiffer than a board. It's November. It's cold. She goes, "Dad, did you see that deer?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Can we eat that deer?" I said, "No, it got hit by a car." She goes, "Oh man, can you kill another deer?" I go, "We got a whole freezer full of deer." And she's like, "But we can always have more, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As many as you want.
How old are your kids?
8 and 10.
Okay. Then
Now I've got a 5, a 3, and an 18-month-old.
solid.
Yeah. Number 4 on the way. So they're giving me a hard time about wondering if I know where that actually comes from. Yes, I do. I'm aware.
Right.
You know how to fix that problem, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that too.
Yeah, you spend more time hunting.
I think
Right?
that's
Is
the
that what you're
problem.
saying?
I think that's the problem because the kids are all born in the same months.
Well, the problem is the coming back after a hunt.
Yeah.
So, the
I understand
separation
that.
turns
Yeah.
into, hey, let's enjoy this for reunion
Right.
a little bit. So
I understand that.
How
What do
old
you?
are your kids?
Oh, I have 3 and 7, and they're 2 girls. So I hit the lottery. I got 2 little.
Learning patience like me. I did not grow up with girls in my household, and I have no idea how to
No.
do that.
I grew up with my dad after the age of 9, so it was just he and I, and so and then I was in an all male profession my entire adult life until 37. So, yeah, it's a learning experience, and I would imagine my girls might be a little bit more rough around the edges than a lot of girls. They might not accept a lot of excuses out of people. I don't know.
Drama.
I'm just,
I'm learning what drama is, and it is not accepted in my house. And my wife goes a lot. She goes, "You have no idea how bad this is going to get." I'm like, "No, it's not accepted." She goes, "You just keep saying that."
I have a rafting company in Idaho. I'm part owner in the Middle Fork of the Salmon, and so I've got a whole. I bought into this company way before I had Black Rifle Coffee with the specific intent that I knew I was going to have kids. I
Right.
didn't know when, but with the intent of getting them on the river all summer long.
Away from
Because it's the Middle Fork of the Salmon in the middle of the Frank Church Wilderness. There's going to be no cell phones. You're going to be rowing boats and hoisting coolers and building fires and pitching tents.
Yep.
But
and dealing with upset clients and,
Exactly.
and happy clients.
Yeah. And so that before I had even met my wife and I think when we were talking about it, she's like, "Why did you even do that?" I was like, I know that I'm going to have kids someday. And I know that this will give them an incredible opportunity to work really hard, be a little bit scared at times and a few things. So I look forward to those opportunities, especially with my girls, right? And now as we get older, I'm 44 as of last month, and that's one of my agendas for their future is my daughter that's 7. This will be her first year to go down the river with us. It's 100 miles, and we'll throw her ass in the water and make sure that she can swim. No, she's a great swimmer. She's gonna have a blast. So one of the questions I had was, when you guys are organizing your media for the year, how many different products are you guys activating across the board? And you kind of did an inventory, but I'm just wondering, it seems like a ton of individual content in different categories. And who runs that?
That's a really good question. One of the things that dictates what we do is obviously sponsor contracts. So we have to produce, X amount of Eastman Elevated podcasts every year. We have to produce X amount of TV shows because the Outdoor Channel expects us to do so many news versus so many renewals or reruns. We have to do so many Beyond the Grids because, the way it's structured. But in that, you add a level of complexity because you have to draw the tags.
Yeah.
So out west, we have so many tags that we have to put in.
Right.
And then the complexity of, okay, great, we drew the tag. We have to capitalize on this. And so there's a margin of error there. There's a margin. I mean, it has been 35 years worth of experience learning where that sweet spot is.
Yeah.
And you know, how many do we hold over for next year? And how many can we, you know, we have a short year. Nobody drew any tags. We had a horrible, you know, September. Nobody killed anything.
Right.
How do we stretch this out?
Yeah.
That type of stuff. I would say it's a group effort. My brother does a lot of it because he's like I said, he's a savant with numbers and being able to look at something and say, okay, this is how many tags we have. This is how many we should be able to get. This is the TV shows we should have. He does a lot of the nuts and bolts of it. But the group as a whole says, let's do this. You know, this worked last time. Let's do this with an added twist of that. And we have these 3 in the can, and we have these 3 potentials if we get short. You know, let's go bear hunting in the spring, or let's do a cat hunt, or we do a prairie dog killing spree here, which is a blast.
YouTube loves that one.
No, YouTube always age restricts it because there's 150 you know, YouTube Nazis. But so it is. I guess it takes a group effort, and it's not easy.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many hunts, like, do you guys have how many hunts are you guys?
Oh my gosh, we have 6 people that hunt, and we do almost 45 hunts a year as a group.
Wow.
On mule deer alone, like, because, you know, this is, you know, on mule deer alone, I spent 8 days scouting.
Right.
Like, then that's 8 days where I was back there and I found the buck that I wanted. Then I spent another 6 hunting, and I was prepared to come back for a week, finish my obligations, and go do another 6 if I had to.
Right.
But that's how much effort goes into that one show. And like I was talking about the specialist, I love mule deer. Like, so
you're a specialist.
Yes.
Is that where you're okay?
Mm-hmm. And so that was me. But Ike spent, 10 weeks this year? You know, I was basically every other week hunting, and he was 10.
I spent almost 12 weeks in the field from the 1st of September, well, a few days before the 1st of September, until it was well into November when I was done out of the field. I mean, my wife calls herself a hunting widow in the fall, which is a struggle with kids, but that's the life we live. And it's, you know, it could be way worse. I could be 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or I could be deployed for X amount of months and not see them. So it's fun, and we were really blessed to do it. Is there challenges? Absolutely. But it's a lot. It is a lot. And I would say out of the 12 weeks, I only hunted 3 hunts for myself. Four hunts for myself.
Yeah. The rest of them were,
you know,
content trips.
Yeah. Well,
basically,
we draw out of our subscriber base for the Bow Hunting Journal. We draw a hunt and one winner, and we take them to Colorado on a Ranching for Wildlife hunt, which is a lot of fun. You get to take a guy that would never have that opportunity otherwise, and put him in a situation where they're seeing 20 bulls a day screaming their heads off, and 150 head of elk, and it's just a lot of fun. And then we do a couple antelope hunts where we draw people out of our digital list and we take them antelope hunting. I did this year. One of our really good friends been waiting 13 years and drew an elk tag. And so Guy and I spent 8 days with him. And actually we had the guys from Fieldcraft up there filming.
Oh, nice.
It was fun. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. And it was really adverse. It was late November, you know, is 2 feet of snow on the ground. And there was days that we couldn't leave camp because you couldn't see anything. And it was below zero weather and adversity with somebody from Kentucky not being comfortable shooting 400 yards, and wind and other hunters because it's public land. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch somebody like that that's been dreaming about this his entire life and help him accomplish something. That's that. My hunts are fun. You know, I killed 200-inch mule deer. I hit that mark, which is great this year. But I think the hunts that I went with other people and shared their experiences is just as fun.
So now, granted, I know, you know, this conversation is more about hunting, but would you classify yourself as all around sportsman? So do you spend a lot of time fishing, hunting, and like, what are all the other things that you guys get into?
I fly fish a lot.
Okay.
I just got back from over the holidays. I took my family to Mexico and I do flats fishing down there, which is so much fun. It's a blast. When you catch 40 bonefish in a day and throw it at 3 permit and actually had a permit on for a split second. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. Fly fish in the summer as much as I can. We do, of course, my kids love to go camping and we do a little spin fishing and that stuff. This time of year, in fact, that's where I was this last weekend. I snowmobile. I do a ton of snowmobiling, especially in weather like we just had a storm of storm of a decade, and 4 foot of fresh snow, and I do a lot of backcountry snowmobiling, which is a blast. Yeah, I mean, we do wing shooting, do a ton of wing shooting. I never got into ice fishing. I just that there's just no offense on that. For
I don't
me.
really know. I do know of a few guys that do it, but I don't know of so many guys that love it. Right? Which is that you?
Yes. And let me be
because you grew
clear.
up in Rock Springs. There's nothing else to do in the winter.
So okay, I shouldn't advertise, but there's this lake there by Rock Springs. I won't name it because I know it's gotten very popular. And unfortunately, with the move, my opportunities to ice fish haven't been as strong. But before the move, winter time was my time to go ice fishing. I don't fly fish. Number one, the really good times to fly fish are when I'm scouting for mule deer. So you have to pick at some point too. Even though being trying to be an all around outdoorsman, I wanted to spend the time in the summer looking for big mule deer, which opened up my time in the winter. That if I had 2 days, I was going to go ice fishing. And so previous full-time career, even though I'm still doing this volunteer, is that I was a full-time youth pastor. And so your time was very strange that you get 2 days off in the middle of the week. Like you don't get weekends. And so I'd go out on the lake with this, 18 inches of ice and there's nobody out there. And it's like playing a video game. You take this fish finder and you drop it into 85 to 100 feet of water and you watch your jig. It shows up on the fish finder and you watch coming up from the bottom these 20-inch Lakers, and those are pups. Those are just the little Lakers. I've got friends. I was not the guy who was good at finding the big fish. When I wanted to go try and get big fish, I'd go with the same guy I talked about, my best friend in Rock Springs, and they'll catch those 25, 30 pounders. There's a couple friends I've got that are posting pictures right now, but they blur the background of the ridge that's behind them,
of course,
so other people can't see where they're catching these big fish. But to catch the giant Lakers, you got to follow the ice. So you're literally on, you can see where the edge of the ice is in relation to where it's freezing up.
That's safe.
You're on 18 inches of ice. Right. You're as safe as can be. Like there was one time my buddy, he took his anchor and he's on a boat. And so he's following the edge of the ice because the big fish follow the edge of the ice. So he's on his boat, tosses his anchor to this hole in the ice. It was this big thing like this. Right. He tossed it in there to hold him in place so he could jig. Because on those really big Lakers, you want to use like a bass casting type of reel, because if you use a spinner, you've got these big jigs like this. They're 6-7 inches long, and they'll sit there and spin if you use a spinning rod. And those big fish don't like it. So you want them sitting on the very bottom. And Travis had me convinced. He's like, dude, those big fish, they come up to your jig and they just sit there and stare at it like this. Until, because you see this giant
put an eye on
your fish finder.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's like, and you'll see him start gumming it. And he's telling the story where it's like, they're gumming it the whole time. Then all of a sudden you'll see your line go slack and you got to set it on 100 feet of water.
Jeez,
so you got to take this pole, and usually they use a long pole. So you're sitting way back from your hole, looking at your fish finder clear over there, and you got to jump up and set it because you're getting rid of all the slack in the line that's there, plus the stretch. And so that was half the battle. But it's pretty surreal when you get it up 100 feet of water. And that fish, it'll be lethargic on the first fight. It'll come up and all of a sudden you'll get it to the hole. And a lot of times, a normal hole on an ice is like this. But if you want to get one of those big 20 plus pounders through, you got to drill 3 holes, and then you got to use your bar and scrape the edges so you don't cut your line. And then what happens is they'll come up all the way up to the top, and then they'll see you. And then that big fish, you got to make sure that you're ready just to let that drag go, because they're going to go. And so then you wear them out and bring them up. There was one time this wasn't a long pole, but I'm standing back and the ice is as clear as can be, because there are days where you've got snow on it. Then the next day you go out and it's completely gone because the drifts are gone and the ice is as clear as it can be. And I'm standing back several feet from the hole, and this fish had hit, and its head is right here in front of me and its tail's behind my feet. These are just giant Lakers. How many pounds? So 20 is considered, that's kind of like your holy grail mark when you're looking for these big Lakers. But to really, really, really get into the big fish, they're 35 plus on this lake. I kid you not. There are guys who catch 35 plus on this lake in 100 feet of water every single year. And so
Are they long or just fat?
all and above. Like,
Jeez.
Buddy Travis
That's
has
an
a
animal
picture
right there.
where he's holding it right here. And Travis is a little bit taller than you.
Right.
So he's not a huge guy, but he's holding it right here. And you got a laker that's right here. This is freshwater fishing. And so that's the drive. But what's even crazier is you can move, 2 miles back upstream it's a reservoir. So water's moving and you get into the channel. And so you can go catch big fish in the morning. Then in the afternoon, you go catch I think it's a limit of 12 right now. I'd have to go check the regs, but it was a limit of 6 when I was living there. And so you go home with these 20-inch pups, and my wife would make a soup. She loved ice fishing too. She was actually usually mad because she's working at the school, but she loved it because we'd pop the hut up, get the heater going, and she's in there with me, and we're reeling it in, and you can see it on the fish finder, and you're fighting over who's going to jig that fish, and then sometimes you catch 2 at a time, and your lines get tangled up, and you're pulling strings and all that. It's organized chaos, but it's a blast. But most people don't describe ice fishing that way. You see a picture in the Midwest in Minnesota of guys just popping up perch,
Yep.
filling a bucket. To me, that's not exciting. The adventure was that I had to pull a sled. There are guys I know who did it out of a backpack because they're chasing the big fish.
Right.
It's not
You drill a hole, fish, and then run up, drill another hole, fish.
Yeah.
So you're chasing them. It's not drilling one hole, sitting on a bucket all day.
No, that's
my
change
experience of it. I've come to the conclusion. I think I have a root canal every one of those days. My best friend's a huge ice fisherman. He loves it. Not my deal.
Well,
he doesn't like snowmobiling. So
here's a funny one with ice fishing. So apparently, and Travis always brought a bottle of Gatorade with him. I never understood why. I was like, what is this? And well, one morning he didn't know the area as well. He's like, we're trying a new spot. So he does a chipper bar and he pours Gatorade in there. Then he'd stick his sonar on there to test the depth. So he didn't have to pop out a big hole. Well, apparently Gatorade works for sonar on top of there. I think water works too, but he's like, I tried Gatorade one time and it just seemed to work a little bit better. So he's testing the depth on top of the ice. Normally you'd have to pop a hole through, put your sonar in to test it, that sort of thing.
You pour Gatorade on top of the ice?
Yeah, you chip a little hole and he poured the Gatorade in, stuffed that sonar in.
Would work through the ice.
It worked a little bit better for whatever reason. Now granted, we're talking 11 or 12 when we're doing this, so maybe there's some new technology with ice fishing stuff, but these are all the, if you want to go into a wormhole and see as redneck a possible thing as you possibly can, go get on the ice shanty.
Really?
The stuff that you could do. And I'm not too proud to admit that I made my own sleds at first. And then I'm like, you know what? This is terrible to be cheap. I'll just go get my own ice fishing sled at Ace. So
I'm getting ready to go down. I'll be at the Daytona this week. So I'm going down to Florida to go bass fishing. And last year I went down. So it's with Johnny Morris and a bunch of those, bunch of guys from the Bass Pro Cabela side. And it was wild. It was the first time I'd been fishing in a spot like that for bass like that. And, using live bait. And it's
Never done that.
Blast.
Is it?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Because you're catching, 5-pound bass, 5-6-pound bass, and they're huge.
Yeah, and they fight.
And the weather last year was great. And then obviously you go to Daytona 500, which is a blast, Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And this year, so Matt and I are going down, Matt Best and I are going down. And we also went out and we said bow fishing.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we were shooting. Oh yeah. And those are incredible. Like it's so much fun. So you go out with the spotlights at night with the bows. And JP he's like a world-class bow fisherman. So I think it's the tilapia, or I forget, like there are these huge fish. I forget what they were. But you're going out and shooting these massive fish and then bringing them in. And then ultimately you're, dicing them up and throwing them in the frying pan. Yeah. It was incredible.
This is in Florida you're doing it?
Yeah, it's in Florida. So it's just outside of Daytona, where every year, I think, until they stop inviting me, I guess, until I stop being a good friend. I don't know. I keep keep waiting for that. Like, oh, hey, we're going to do this one alone, guys. Oh, man. All right.
Hey, isn't it February? Shouldn't I be getting an invite?
I know.
What happened to that?
Hey, what about February? No,
Hello? Is anybody out there?
I've never actually done a lot of bass fishing because I grew up in Idaho.
Mhm.
So, I grew up fly fishing. I built a fly rod when I was, 11 or something like that. And I grew up fly fishing and using casting bubbles and flies and on, trout.
Yep.
That's
Where
what we
in Idaho
do.
would you grow up?
Lewiston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody's familiar with Lewiston, especially if they're sportsmen. They're the confluence of the Snake and the Clearwater River.
Some of the best steelhead fishing in
Oh, yeah.
Clearwater.
Yeah.
It's a little, I don't know, 10 years ago, it was a little sketchy. I mean, it's freaking backwoods there.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. I love it. This year, I got together with my buddy, Brian Bentz, and they do aluminum boats. So this year, Matt and I are headed up the river with our Black Rifle Coffee aluminum boat, do some sturgeon fishing. So, that's a heck of a ride. Have you guys done that yet?
I have not. That's on my list. The guys from Cryptic keep asking me to come.
Oh, yeah.
I need to do it.
Well, a few years ago, I caught a 9.5-foot sturgeon.
Jeez.
And it looks like a dolphin.
Yeah.
I mean, a prehistoric, weird dinosaur dolphin. I don't know how to describe it. It's such a wild experience.
So the deal, you can't take them out of the water because all the photos I see that everybody's standing in the water, so you can't take them out of the water.
No.
So it's a catch and release.
Yeah,
thing.
it's catch and release, and I think I've done a little bit of it throughout my entire life. I was fortunate enough to catch a really big sturgeon several years ago. And it's boring too.
Is it?
Yeah, you
Sit
throw
around and wait.
Yeah, you sit around and wait for it and wait for it. And then once the fight begins, obviously that's fun. But okay, I'd rather catch like steelhead, or I'd rather catch cutthroat, especially if I have my preferred method of fishing. And what I like to do is I like, really epic locations in the mountains, whether it's like northern Washington, Idaho, Montana. I like fly fishing. I like typically wearing my swim trunks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like swim trunks,
warm.
nice and warm, throwing flies, looking at the catch or looking at the hatch. And that's my favorite type of fishing, like the favorite. And then the early fall, which is always a conflict for hunting season, but the early fall, when the water starts to get a little bit colder and it's still pretty low, and it turns into wader fishing. But I really like it because it's quiet. Everybody's hunting. There's not a lot of travel, right? So throwing flies that time of year is one of my favorite things to do. But now I caught the hunting bug. So
I heard you killed a couple bulls this year, which is awesome.
Yeah, one here in Utah, rifle, and one in Colorado. Another Johnny Morris trip. He's my we'll call it sportsman. I don't know what you'd call him. He keeps giving me cool shit to
Your adventure planner.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you come and do this thing? I'm like, okay. One thing I've learned is you never say no.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
if he texts you and asks you to do something, you're like, no. Well, two, he puts on epic stuff. You never say no. Whatever he's got, yes, of course. I didn't even say anything, but looking at, yes, of course, I'll be there.
That's
right?
just a standing yes, of course.
Yes, it's just a standing yes, of course. Outside of, some type of major surgery, or major life event, I'm always going to be there. But before we jump off, I wanted to talk about where can people find you guys? Like, what are you guys doing this year? What's super exciting that you want to talk about as far as the company's concerned?
Cool. Find us on social, Eastman's Hunting Journals,
Right.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Putting out a ton of content every single week. Eastman's Elevated podcast is weekly. So and Brian Barney, our host there, does an awesome job talking about hunting strategies and everything from archery to rifle and entertaining guests, cool stuff. One of the cool things that we have this year that's new in the last 12 months is our Tag Hub, which is our research tool. It's our online research tool, which will help the guys out there learn, for instance, Wyoming antelope. We were talking about that. What where can I put in for antelope? If I don't draw it, is there over the counter or leftover tag opportunities? You know, the mule deer. What can I, if I want to shoot a mule deer every year, what state out west can I do that? Over the counter, archery elk, you know, Idaho, Colorado. Where do I do that? So that's taghub.eastmans.com. Lots of cool things that are coming up with that as we morph and change it, and it's forever growing. And we have a ton of things coming out. We have, of course, COVID's kind of screwed a lot of our adventure hunting, which sucks. I mean, we had Namibia planned last year that didn't happen. We tried to do it again this year. That's not going to happen. And so hopefully next year, we got some other things in the works. We'll see. But it's going to be a neat year. It's going to be interesting. And hopefully they decide to turn the COVID off and we're good to go. But
I hope so, man. I really do. Like I've got a spring black bear hunt that I really want to get done in Canada and BC. And it's one of the things I've been looking forward to for a couple of years, and I just can't seem to get it done. It's a pain in the ass because last year I was up there and I was moose hunting. There's tons of black bear. They're everywhere.
They got big bears.
And they got big bears. So I'm chomping at the bit to get up there.
Is that a spring hunt?
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to get it. I'm doing a spring brown bear hunt this year, which is. Yeah, that's going to be fun. That's going to be really fun because they didn't do much hunting last year. So I'm hoping we see some big bears, and I can't wait. I can't wait to get up there. I've never been in that Kodiak area. It's not on Kodiak. It's on the peninsula, but I can't wait to get up there. Well,
Those are fun hunts.
Dang, guys, I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and subscribe. Check them out over at...
Eastmans.com.
Eastmans.com. Subscribe. This has been around for a long time. It's an incredible resource. I know I'm a fan, so I appreciate you guys stopping in.
Thank you for having us.